Hello everyone, in today's project I am building an eccentric reducer out of a piece of exhaust tubing that I had laying around. I don't really need this for anything specific, I was just trying to have a little bit of fun and making something. Alright, let's get into it. So starting off, I'm using a sheet of paper as a pipe wrap. I don't have a real pipe wrap, so a lot of times I just use a piece of paper, and as long as you align it correctly, it'll give you a nice square line around it. So once I wrap it around right here, I'll make a mark right at the end of the sheet of paper that's underneath there. That way it'll give you that exact circumference around the pipe. And then basically just folding that sheet of paper over multiple times until you get as many sections around the piece of pipe that you're looking for. So there I folded it up 4 times, and after I thought about it a little bit, I thought I needed to get one more section out of it. So I folded it over one more time, which essentially divides up that circumference into 8 equal sections. And then wrapping it back around again, and I just make a mark at every one of the creases in the piece of paper, and that marks that pipe into 8 equal sections all the way around. Ended up marking the creases with a pen because they were a little hard to see the first time around. Then at the very end of the pipe, I aligned those marks with my first marks, and now I'm just dividing each of those 8 sections into thirds, and center of those thirds will dictate what the end pipe size is. So if you're actually making a reducer to match a piece of pipe, you'll have to do the math on what circumference you need to get the right size specifically for that end one. And then basically just mark those third sections back towards the original marks, which will end up with the pie shape that you'll need to cut out of the pipe. Then once you get all of your pie shapes, I kind of mark out which sections need to be cut out. That way it's a little bit easier to see once I'm cutting them out, which ones that I actually need to cut. Now I just have a cutoff wheel and a grinder, and I'm trying to do the best I can to stay on my marks and cut out those pie shapes. I did learn later in this project that if you take a little bit extra time, make sure and cut as narrow of a gap as possible there at the point of that cut. So once you hammer it all together, you end up with the smallest gap as possible for welding it up. I'm using DeWalt brand cutoff wheels here. I've tried various ones, and I found the DeWalt ones work pretty well. I'd be curious what you think the best bang for your buck is on cutoff wheels. Here I'm just now hammering all of those pie cuts down towards the center. Try to get the smaller shape on the bottom of the reducer. And you can see they'll all come together back towards the center. I was trying to find a clamp I could use to hold them all together, and I couldn't figure anything out, and then I ended up just finding a big washer that I jammed down on there that held them all together pretty nicely. And now I'm just tacking all the ends together to hold them all in place. Once they're all tacked together, you can kind of fine tune the gaps here with the hammer. So as you bring them all closer together, it starts to close up the gaps in all the pie cuts to make them a little bit easier to weld. You can see on some of the ends I have there some pretty wide gaps still because I wasn't very careful when I was cutting them out with the cutoff wheel. Here I'm just using a little flux core 110 weld machine to weld up all the gaps. Works pretty good. You got to turn it down a little bit on this thin exhaust tubing material. These first welds went pretty decent, but as the piece starts to get hot, you have to jump around pretty good. Now I just have a flap wheel sanding disc on the grinder to clean up the welds and buff it down to look a little bit cleaner. I did end up with some porosity in some of the welds, so they're not the best, but it worked for just putting this little project together for fun. Then I just cleaned it up and tried to buff it down as smooth as I could, and I think it turned out pretty good. I hope you enjoyed this project. I thought it was pretty fun to try out here in the shop. If you enjoyed the video, please think about subscribing, and I'm going to continue to make more videos like this.